I stepped out onto the porch just as the last light of day stretched across the tree line. The air was heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth after a brief afternoon rain. That was when I saw her. A lynx, thin and trembling, stood at the edge of the yard. Her fur clung unevenly to her body, her ribs sharp against the fading sunlight. She didn't run. She didn't growl. She just looked straight at me, her golden eyes locking onto mine. For a moment I froze. My mind told me to back away, to go inside, to shut the door. But my body wouldn't move. I had never been this close to a wild animal before, not without the barrier of glass or distance. The silence between us pressed down on me, broken only by the faint rustle of leaves. I whispered, though I knew she couldn't understand. "Please, don't come closer." My voice cracked. The lynx didn't move, her gaze steady, almost pleading. That was when I noticed how unsteady her legs were, how each breath looked like a struggle. She wasn't a predator in that moment. She was starving. I stepped back inside, my heart hammering. My kitchen looked ordinary, but my hands shook as I opened the fridge. I didn't know what a lynx would eat, but meat seemed obvious. I pulled out some leftover chicken from dinner, the kind I had meant to save for lunch tomorrow. As I carried the plate back outside, doubt crept in. Feeding her could be dangerous. If she came back, it might be worse. My neighbor Tom had once warned me never to feed wildlife. He said it ruined their instincts and drew them too close to humans. His words echoed in my head, but when I opened the door, the sight of her swaying on her paws silenced every thought but one. She needed help. I set the plate down slowly on the porch floor, keeping my distance. She watched me, her ears twitching at every creak of the wood beneath my feet. For a long moment, nothing happened. My breath caught in my throat. Then, with cautious steps, she moved closer. The sound of her claws clicking softly against the boards sent a shiver down my spine. She sniffed the chicken, glanced back at me once, and then devoured it in frantic bites. Her teeth tore through the meat with desperation, and I realized just how close I was standing. My hand trembled on the doorframe. I whispered again, more to myself than her. "Easy now. Easy." She didn't lash out, didn't growl. She just ate until the plate was clean, then lifted her head and licked her muzzle. For the briefest second, our eyes met again, and I thought I saw something change, something softer. But maybe that was just me, desperate to believe there was understanding. As the last scraps disappeared, I stepped back inside quickly and shut the door. My chest heaved with relief and terror. Through the glass, I watched her. She lingered a moment longer, nose pressed to the boards, searching for anything left. Then she turned, her body slipping back into the shadows of the trees. I stood there long after she was gone, staring into the darkness. My mind spun with questions I couldn't answer. Had I done the right thing? What if she came back? What if she brought trouble with her? But beneath the fear, there was something else. An ache, a pull I couldn't explain. That wild creature had looked at me, not with the eyes of a threat, but with the quiet desperation of hunger. And I had answered. When I finally pulled the curtains shut and sat down, the silence of the house felt heavier than before. I told myself it was over, that she would return to the forest, and I would never see her again. Still, deep inside, I wasn't sure I believed it. That night, every creak outside my window made me sit up in bed, listening for the sound of paws on the porch. The morning after the encounter, I stepped onto the porch with my coffee in hand, my eyes scanning the yard without even realizing it. Part of me expected to see her again, standing there, waiting. But the space was empty, just damp grass shining under the weak sunlight. The plate I had left outside was gone too, carried off by the rain and the night. For a while I stood still, listening, but all I heard were the crows bickering in the distance. The day stretched on without a sign. By evening, I convinced myself it had been a single moment, nothing more. She was probably deep in the forest by now, far from houses and porches. I told myself that was better, for her and for me. But even as I said it, a strange weight settled in my chest. 2 days passed. The air grew cooler, the mornings edged with frost. I kept looking outside, though I didn't admit why. It was on the third day, while I was raking leaves in the yard, that I saw movement near the tree line. My breath caught. She was there. The lynx emerged slowly, her body lean but steadier, her coat catching the pale sun. She looked stronger than before, not healed but no longer on the brink of collapse. My pulse raced as I froze with the rake in my hand. I whispered into the empty yard. You came back. She didn't come closer, not right away. She watched me from the edge of the woods, her ears turning toward every sound. The tension between us was heavy, but it wasn't the same as before. This time, her body didn't tremble. Her stance was calmer, deliberate. She knew me. I could feel it. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with the light off, staring out the window. Every shadow stirred my imagination. Was she out there again, watching, waiting? I felt caught between awe and unease. I wanted to help her, but I knew what it could mean, drawing a predator closer to human homes. My neighbor's words echoed in my mind. The next afternoon, Tom stopped by while I was hauling firewood to the shed. He leaned on the fence, squinting. You've been looking nervous lately, he said. Everything all right? I hesitated. I didn't want to lie, but I also didn't want to admit the truth. Finally, I said, I saw a lynx a few days ago. Right here. Tom's face tightened. You didn't feed it, did you? I froze, the silence stretching too long. His eyes narrowed. Don't mess around with that, he said, his voice firm. Feeding predators only makes them bolder. Next thing you know, they'll be coming right up to your door, and that's trouble for everyone. For you. For me. For the animal, too. I nodded, pretending to agree, but the knot in my stomach tightened. After he left, his words stuck with me. I thought about the way she had looked at me, not with aggression, but with something close to trust. Was I wrong to respond? That evening, the woods felt closer than usual. I lit only one lamp inside, keeping the house dim. I wanted to pretend I wasn't waiting, but I couldn't shake the pull that kept me glancing toward the window. Hours passed. The world outside went dark, crickets replacing birdsong. I tried to sleep, but something stirred me awake close to midnight. A faint sound just outside. I sat up in bed, my heart thundering. At first I thought it was the wind, the creak of branches. Then I heard it again, sharp, deliberate, a scraping sound against the porch boards. I held my breath, straining to listen. The sound came once more, like claws dragging across wood. The night pressed in around me, and I realized she might be closer than ever before. The morning light slipped through the curtains, soft and pale. I woke with the memory of the scraping sound still buzzing in my mind. For a moment, I thought I had dreamed it, until I noticed the faint marks etched into the wood of the porch when I stepped outside. My chest tightened. Something had been there, close enough to touch the door. I opened it cautiously, expecting an empty yard again. But this time I froze. Right there, on the porch, stood the lynx. Not alone. Two small, spotted cubs pressed close to her legs. Their ears were tufted, their eyes wide with curiosity, and their paws clumsy against the boards. My breath caught in my throat. The sight rooted me in place. She didn't snarl or leap away. She simply stood there, her body taut but calm, her gaze locked on me. The cubs peeked around her legs, noses twitching at the strange scents of wood, paint, and the faint trace of last night's firewood. They were beautiful, wild, and terrifying all at once. My first instinct was fear. This wasn't just one starving lynx anymore. This was her family. My mind screamed that this was dangerous, that I had crossed a line without realizing it. If she thought I was a threat, it could end badly. But the way she looked at me, it wasn't the same as before. There was no desperation this time. There was something steadier, as if she was showing me something. I whispered into the morning air, my voice trembling. You brought them here. The cubs moved forward a few uncertain steps, their tiny claws ticking lightly against the boards. They sniffed at the edge of the porch, one pawing at the spot where I had set food days before. I could hardly breathe. My hands gripped the doorframe as if to anchor me in place. Every instinct told me to back away, to shut the door, to end this before it went too far. But my heart hammered with something else, an understanding I couldn't explain. She had brought her cubs here, to me. In the wild, trust was a rare and fragile thing, and this was her way of giving it. I stood motionless, letting the moment unfold. One of the cubs sniffed closer to the threshold, its small nose almost touching the line of the door. Its whiskers twitched as it tilted its head, staring up at me with round eyes. The other cub clambered clumsily over a crack in the boards, letting out a tiny, raspy sound that made me flinch with the suddenness of it. The mother stayed still, her muscles tense, but her eyes calm. She didn't stop them. She didn't push them back. She let them explore. And I realized she was watching me more than she was watching them, as if to gauge how I would react. My throat was dry, but I forced myself to whisper softly. It's okay. I won't hurt them. Whether she understood or not didn't matter. What mattered was that she didn't retreat. She stood her ground, steady, her ears flicking only when the wind shifted. I wanted to reach for my phone, to capture the moment, but I couldn't bring myself to move. The idea of breaking this fragile thread of trust felt wrong. So I just stood, memorizing every detail. The speckled fur of the cubs, the way their tails flicked, the quiet strength of their mother. A battle raged inside me. Part of me wanted to step forward, to offer food again, to ease their struggle. Another part screamed that I shouldn't interfere, that I was already too deep into something that didn't belong to me. The weight of that decision pressed on my chest until it hurt. One cub pawed at the wooden threshold, sniffing around as if searching for a hidden treasure. The other crouched low, its back legs twitching like it wanted to pounce, only to leap clumsily at its sibling instead. They tumbled for a second, their small bodies rolling awkwardly before righting themselves. I almost laughed, but the sound caught in my throat. The mother's gaze never left mine. Her eyes were sharp and endless, yet not hostile. She allowed this, all of it. She had chosen to bring them here. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she shifted slightly, her body angling toward the steps. The cubs followed, their paws tapping against the boards as they moved closer to the edge. But not before one of them turned back, its nose brushing against the line of the door once more. That tiny, curious gesture felt heavier than words. I didn't move until they disappeared into the tree lean, their spotted coats blending with the mottled light of the woods. Only then did I let out the breath I'd been holding, my knees weak under me. I sank into the doorway, my hands shaking. She had shown me her cubs, the most precious thing she had. It wasn't just survival anymore. It was trust, and I had no idea what to do with it. As the silence closed back in, I glanced at the porch where their paws had tapped and scraped. The marks were small, but they were proof. They had been here, and something told me this wasn't the last time I'd see them. The days that followed blurred into a rhythm I never could have imagined. Every morning, I opened the door with hesitation, unsure if they would be there. Sometimes the porch was empty, the boards only marked by faint scratches where little paws had wandered. Other mornings, the lynx stood at the edge of the yard, her cubs tumbling around her legs. I learned to move slowly, to keep my voice low, to let them decide how close to come. One morning, the cubs crept right up to the steps as their mother lingered a few feet back. They sniffed at the porch rail, their tiny tongues flicking as they tested the air. I had left a small piece of chicken near the edge, not close enough to tempt them inside, but enough to ease their hunger. They devoured it quickly, one batting at the scraps as the other growled in a tiny, shaky sound. I felt both joy and dread at the sight. I wanted them strong, but I knew I was pulling them closer to a world they didn't belong to. When their mother finally stepped forward, she didn't take the food. She just stood there, watching me as her cubs licked the boards clean. Her stare was heavy, as if reminding me this wasn't mine to control. I whispered, I know this can't last. Still, I couldn't stop myself. The quiet moments felt almost unreal. I'd sit inside with the curtains half drawn, watching the cubs chase each other through the leaves at the edge of the yard. Their play was clumsy, wild, but it filled the air with a life I hadn't felt in years. Sometimes I would catch myself smiling, and then the guilt would return. I was making them comfortable here, too close to human hands. It wasn't long before Tom noticed. One afternoon, he came striding across the yard, his boots heavy on the gravel. I stepped off the porch quickly, hoping he hadn't seen the cubs slip into the trees minutes before. You've been feeding them, haven't you? His voice was sharp, almost accusing. I shook my head, but the denial felt weak. He scowled. Don't lie to me. I've seen the tracks. I've heard the noises at night. You're bringing trouble to all of us. I tried to explain, my voice unsteady. She was starving, Tom. She had cubs. I couldn't just do nothing. His jaw tightened. That's not your choice to make. If the wrong person finds out, they'll call animal control. And once that happens, those animals are gone for good. Do you understand? Gone. His words hit harder than I expected. He wasn't cruel, just firm. He was right, in his way. I stood silent, unable to argue. Tom sighed, shaking his head. I'm telling you this for your own good. And theirs. That night, I left no food. I sat by the window, restless, my chest tight with conflict. When the shadows shifted near the tree lean, my heart raced. The lynx appeared, her cubs darting around her legs. They paused at the porch, noses twitching, searching for something that wasn't there. One of the cubs let out a soft cry, pawing at the boards as if confused. The mother watched me through the glass, her gaze steady, unblinking. I pressed my hand to the window, torn between longing and regret. I wanted to open the door, to give them what little I had. But Tom's words echoed again, gone for good. I couldn't let that be their fate. Over the next few days, I tried to distance myself. I kept the porch clear, no scraps, no plates. Still they came. Sometimes they lingered at the steps, sometimes they played just beyond the fence. Each time, I forced myself to stay inside, watching silently. The ache grew heavier with each visit. Then, one morning, I opened the door to nothing but silence. The yard was empty, the boards untouched. No marks, no prints, no eyes waiting at the edge of the woods. I stood there longer than I should have, waiting for a flicker of movement. But the forest gave nothing back. As the hours stretched into evening, I realized they were gone. Maybe for good. A hollow space opened in my chest, colder than the autumn air. I whispered into the empty yard, as if the trees could carry my voice. Be safe. The house felt heavier that night. The quiet no longer carried promise but absence. I told myself it was for the best, that this was how it had to end. But as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the emptiness their absence left behind. A week passed with nothing but silence from the woods. Every morning I opened the door, coffee steaming in my hands, my eyes straining at the tree. And every morning, there was nothing. The porch stayed clean, the boards untouched, the forest quiet. The emptiness grew heavier with each passing day, as if something inside me had been cut away. By the seventh day, I had begun to tell myself they were gone for good. It was easier that way. I stacked firewood, scrubbed the porch clean, tried to drown the ache in busy work. But the truth lingered, a constant tug I couldn't shake. I missed them. I missed the way the cubs scrambled clumsily across the boards, the steady weight of their mother's gaze. It had been dangerous, I knew that, but it had also been a gift. That evening, the sun dropped low, staining the horizon with streaks of orange and purple. I stepped outside one last time, more out of habit than hope. And then I saw them. At the far edge of the clearing, just where the trees began, the lynx stood with her cubs. My breath caught hard in my chest. They had grown, their bodies sturdier, their coats brighter. They didn't look weak anymore. They looked alive, wild, and strong. The cubs tumbled over one another in the grass, swatting and rolling as their mother stood tall beside them. She didn't move toward me, not this time. She didn't bring them close. She stayed where the forest met the field, her outline sharp against the fading light. It was as if she knew this was the right distance. I took a step forward, but stopped myself. The urge to call out, to offer something, to beg them closer burned in me, but I held it back. This was her world, not mine. The cubs needed the forest, the freedom of it. Not the porch. Not me. Then, slowly, she turned her head. Our eyes met across the distance. The air seemed to still, every sound falling away. Her stare wasn't desperate anymore, or even cautious. It was steady calm. It was the look of a creature who had survived, who had protected what mattered. And in that moment, I felt it. She was saying goodbye. One of the cubs noticed me then, its ears flicking as it looked up from its play. It bounded a few steps forward, its little body quick and clumsy, before its mother let out a low, quiet sound. The cub stopped, turning back instantly. The bond between them was unbreakable, stronger than anything I could offer. My throat ached as I whispered into the dusk, though I knew they couldn't hear me. Thank you. The cubs circled their mother, and together they slipped into the shadows of the trees. The forest swallowed them whole, their spotted coats melting into the mottled light until there was nothing left. I stayed there long after, staring at the place where they had vanished, unwilling to move. Finally, I turned back to the porch, my heart heavy but warm. The emptiness was still there, but it felt different now. Softer. I understood something I hadn't before. The real gift wasn't in their visits, or even in the sight of the cubs. It was in the trust she had given me, brief and fragile as it was. She had let me see her world, if only for a moment. As the night settled in, I closed the door gently behind me. The house was quiet, but not as lonely as before. Somewhere in the forest, they lived on, wild, untamed, exactly as they were meant to be. And I carried with me the memory of that final look, a reminder that sometimes the greatest gift isn't what we can hold on to, but what we are allowed to witness before it slips away.